As a real estate agent in an ever-evolving industry, I see strangers make bold predictions all the time, as well as strategic maneuvers from really sharp people. Recently, Compass's CEO Robert Reffkin has really gone off the deep end, making waves of lawsuits and blog posts and media appearances, positioning himself as a champion of all agents and companies and home sellers at the same time. He literally says he's representing every agent, including me, in the country in his quest. And he literally is encouraging every home seller to sue Zillow, a vendor that is in the marketplace, and every MLS and the National Association of Realtors, which is my association in MLS. And he's accused my company of colluding with Zillow. So he basically is suing on my behalf, the company I broker with, the services that I use. What the heck is going on with this guy? I'm Bill Gross, and this is my weekly real estate market update. So, Robert Reffkin has framed his lawsuit against Zillow as a battle on behalf of the real estate community. Filed a few months ago, he finds it unfair that we as realtors agreed either we're going to market our listings together or we'll market them separately. And that's an option that we all have as agents on behalf of our sellers. What's best for our seller? Either we keep it private, we don't put it in multiple listing, we don't put it in public services, and then we can market it to our own database, our own contacts and such. Or, and what most of us do most of the time, put it in all available public marketing, get as much visibility for clients as possible. Now, Zillow looked at what Compass was doing. Compass had created this hidden listings program to hide listings from other agents so they could double end them. They use this to fool sellers into letting them have more time to sell the listings. And they use this to fool buyers into thinking homes are on the market for less, so they'll overpay for properties on other people's listings, including their own, when they represent the buyers. The whole thing is an age-old, tested, and failed service that apparently Robert Reffkin has bet the company on. And so when he was interviewed recently by CNBC, he always gets these fluff interview pieces. He said that he's suing literally he's suing Zillow, and this is a quote now, I have below that the transcription, on behalf of all agents and all home sellers. I didn't ask him to do this. I don't think most agents have. Maybe all Compass agents are on his side, but those are the rest of us, I would say, are probably not. Now, his claim is false. One of the things he says is that when you list your property as a listing agent or as a seller, you're forced to use Zillow and have your listings published on Zillow. And that's not really true. It's actually, I don't know if he doesn't know what my MLS does, and many do. In fact, the way he speaks about the MLS continues the misconception. There are 500 multiple listing services in America. They all compete with each other. In fact, here in Southern California, there are agents that belong to one of several. I belong to the Combined Westside LA, Combined LA Westside, CLAW, or the MLS.com. There's CRMLS. I believe there's one in Inglewood as well. And there's one in the South Bay. There's one in the Valley. Here in Los Angeles, we have several choices that compete for good service, with good service for agents like me. So for example, when I list a property, I don't know how well this is going to pop up on the screen, I have the choice to show it active as coming soon or not, which means off market or not, as my MLS allows. And then if you scroll down, I have a chance to make it where are we here? I lost my spot. Oh, that's a shame, Bill. The marketing information. Oh, I can put the address, yes or no. I can allow automated valuation models, yes or no. I can allow virtual office websites to comment on it, no, yes or no. ListHub is a syndication service that takes the listing and puts it on thousands, if not millions, of websites. Homes.com, yes or no. Apartments.com, yes or no. Realtor.com, yes or no. The international MLS, yes or no. Now, Zillow's not on here because they're part of the ListHub, part of the syndication process. If we list a property and choose to syndicate, they get it. If we don't syndicate, we don't, which means we're not marketing the property publicly, and that's the rules. And we, as an association, I'm a member, and theoretically, Rifkin's a member as well, and all of his agents are. We voted on these rules. And when you belong to an association, you play by the rules that you belong to. It'd be like joining a country club that says you can only play golf for certain hours, and you decide you want to go earlier in those hours. the club's going to kick you out. That's what MLS is basically saying to Rifkin, is play by the rules. We've all agreed to this. And you have a chance to overrule. You bring your agents to elections and put your own people and make your own rules. But again, here's the key point. You as a seller, you as an agent have a choice. You can market it publicly, you can market it privately. There's several other options in between. My brokerage has a particular policy. We either do it publicly or privately. And we disclose to our seller in writing what we're going to do and which is best for them. And we're encouraged to get as wide a net as possible unless it doesn't serve the seller. And for maybe security reasons, most commonly, privacy reasons, then you would keep it off the market. So the idea that you're forced to is just false. MLSs have responded to the market and given us agents and our sellers in turn the choice over how we want to list the property. So I don't know if he's just not aware of that or he's just making things up as he goes along here. I'm not quite sure what the strategy is on all that. Okay, so, I lost my spot on that. That's a shame. Oh, that's a shame. I had Reffkin's link. Okay, well, I can't show that. Well, anyhow, I was going to show that he said that he's the choice you have is you can go with Compass and have it just on their system, but then at the same time he says, but we allow all other agents to see it and we invite them all in and then we make our list available to all agents. So which is it? Is it public or is it private? And I think that's the key, is he wants it both ways. And we are a large organization with 1 million real estate people across the country, and we have to have rules that we follow, that we go by. Now, I'm sorry, I lost the link I wanted to bring up here. I'm going to go ahead and search for it online rather than pause. I'm just not that savvy in terms of my technology. Here we go. So, I lost my spot. I don't believe that. Okay, well, anyhow, I will continue. He put in a recent LinkedIn post, I'm going to quote this: if your home sat in the market, lost momentum, or sold below its potential, and then he's encouraging you have grounds for legal action against NAR and your MLS. Now, to me, there are a lot of reasons why a home can sit in the market. Most commonly, in my experience, is because it's overpriced. As much as I might talk to the seller about pricing the property right correctly, they're going to insist on doing what they think is best. At the end of the day, it's the seller's property. It's not my property, so I don't get to tell them what they have to do. And yet he's saying if it sat on the market, lost momentum, or sold below its potential, basically he's encouraging every single seller to sue their agent and the MLS and NAR. And look, frankly, if you have grounds, you should sue them. But we don't need people to encourage them and give them encouragement to be imprecise. Basically, he's building up his victimization. He's a victim, right? His company is being victimized by Zillow or whatever his thoughts are. And now he's trying to pump up the victimology of every seller in America. What a great strategy. You know, if he's successful, if he can get every single seller in America to sue every other agency, then I guess we all go out of business and the only company left is Compass. I guess that's a good strategy. To me, that seems pretty, disgusting to tell people they should sue with no grounds, to give them false hope. And I think as real estate professionals, what is that doing to our industry? Like, really, how are you advancing things? How are you serving your customer by saying, without any evidence, you're taking advantage, so sue somebody? Just sue somebody. He's suing Zillow in New York. He, in his lawsuit, accused my brokerage, EXP, of colluding with Zillow with no evidence. Yeah, let's just sue people. I don't think that's really the professional standard that we want to abide by in our industry. So the reason why Reffkin wanted to go on CNBC wasn't to answer the questions he was asked. He wanted to talk about their financial results. And they put out last week, they had record second quarter results. Yeah, that's great. Income's up, units up, sales up, revenue up. You know what's not up? You know the one thing that's not up at Compass? Their profits. Net income, minus $72 million in, what period is that? The last 12 months. And in the period of year ending 2024, loss of 154, I think it's millions. I'm pretty sure it's millions. It can't be dollars. It can't be hundreds of thousands. Yeah, millions. So this company raised billions of dollars on Wall Street and then loses money competing with other people, putting them out of business, threatening, encouraging, filing lawsuits frivolously, accusing companies like mine frivolously of collusion, and then encouraging sellers to sue. Meanwhile, they're not even making a profit. They're not paying any federal tax because there's no profit involved in this company. I mean, at some point, really, I just think it's time to grow up. It's time, if you're the CEO of the largest, you want to use that sign, you're the largest real estate company in America, well then grow up and act like it. You can't encourage people to sue each other and continue to lose money and pay no taxes along the way. If he was successful, every real estate company that paid taxes be out of business, the only one left is his. How does that even work in the long run? So then going a little further, he was asked when he was asked the question initially, this is funny. The interviewer on CNBC, let me go back to that picture. The interviewer, one of my favorite, Andrew Sorkin, is really one of my favorite interviewers.
New York City's real estate market.
Had him on, asked him a question about New York City because everybody's concerned. What happens if New York City becomes socialist? The man running and leading apparently for the mayorship, Mamdani, has called for a complete rent control freeze on every unit in New York City. And what people who know the situation know in New York is currently there are over 26,000 units that are sitting vacant because the rent control is so low, it's not worth it for the owner to fix it up to get it in a rentable condition. Somewhere between 26,000 and 43,000 units are sitting empty because of the rent control laws. And Mamdani is proposing that every unit would be under rent control. And so when asked this, Reffkin said kind of slickly that he doesn't believe in slogans but actual policies. He talks about incentives for builders, which means giving money to builders to build property. It doesn't work out so well when the government gives money to people rather than solve the problem. And what he doesn't do is address the problem. The real problem is the rent control. And so here we have our leader in real estate, our proposed leader, our aspiring leader, when asked a direct question in national media, rather than answering it, saying, hey, look, this is America. Why does the city tell people what they can and can't rent property for and take owners' property rights away by adding more rent freezes? The free market will dictate the best solution for everybody, and we need to unfreeze the units that are frozen, not add more to it. He can't say that because he is the darling of Wall Street, which are mostly globalists, and they're fine with making New York City into a complete third world hellscape. And that's he's going to go along with that because he needs their money because they're the ones who really pay his paycheck. So unfortunately, here we are in 2025 with a avowed communist saying he wants to take all of New York City and make it like the worst parts of New York City. And the leading real estate broker on CNBC is basically saying, yeah, that's fine. Let's just give more money to friends of the politicians, more incentives to builders, and that should solve the problem. That hasn't worked anywhere. Anyhow, what do you think? New York City looks like it's headed off the cliff faster than ever. And unfortunately, I think Robert Reffkin, who is literally suing Zillow, he's accusing the second largest brokerage in America, EXP, largest by transactions. He's threatening the MLS and the National Association of Realtors while claiming to sue on behalf of every agent in America. What do you think? You tell me. Give me your comments. Put below. I'd love to see your information. Okay, let's continue with the rest of the market. And as always, the market, we look at two sides of an economy. There's demand and supply. Demand is interest rates, and supply would be inventory. On interest rates, they came down almost 0.25% last week to 6.63, down from 6.88 or 6.81 last week. So almost 0.25% drop in rates with all the confusion and tariff mania and everything going on in the world. Rates have stayed about the same, kind of the midpoint of where they've been for a year, and actually ended up the year dropping, which can only be good news nationally. It can only encourage more buyers because you can buy the same house for less or buy the same house, a bigger house for the same payment. So it can only help increase the activity in the real estate market. I think lower rates would be beneficial. We know there's a political battle between President Trump and the head of the Fed, and I look at the numbers and say the rates should drop about 1% to 1.5% if all things remain the same. Time will tell. On the inventory side, it's about the same as it was when I reported last week. The inventory in America is dropped in the month of June, not sure why, unusual. So less houses on the market, and I think this is a reflection of the high interest rates, that there are sellers who would normally be selling, but because their payments so low aren't. And so that's become a real factor. This is the first time that in June inventory has gone down. Normally it goes up as more sellers bring their homes to market. Not only is that reversal, you can see that June's the lowest ever recorded other than COVID period. So you hear stories about inventory going up, and that's true, but that's somewhat dishonest in that it's only going up in relation to COVID years, in relation to the worldwide epidemic. In terms of normal years, inventory is still way, way low by historical standards. And remember, we have more people competing for those lesser homes today. So the inventory is really a big problem. In Los Angeles, the market is edging towards an even market. It's been a seller's market for the last few years, inching down to 35 recently from 36, 7, 8, 9 the prior months. It was 35.5 last week. It's 35.1 this week. Analysis Research, which takes all the factors and puts a number to it. So again, markets are local. LA, we have a lot of systemic problems, a lot of business problems, and as a result, a real softening of the market with very little inventory. And it just tells you if we just solve some of the financial problems in our city, we would have a fantastic housing market. So that's locally. Let's take a look at the real estate news overall. So good and bad news is LA officially loses its spot on top as the worst city for traffic in the US, according to Consumer Affairs. City of Los Angeles is now the second worst traffic. For my whole, I think, adult life, we've had the worst traffic. And it's not because we did much. We didn't build any new freeways or new lanes for the most part. Almost all improvements are for mass transit to shuttle Olympic visitors and World Cup visitors, while normal commuters are stuck with the same freeways or less as they wear out. But traffic's worse in Washington, D.C. and in L.A., we have a declining population, so when you have less people, you have more room to drive on the freeway. I have to say, on a personal level, a lot less traffic. It's actually, I don't know what it is. I can't document it, but man, it's been nice. A lot less traffic lately, and I hope that trend continues for whatever reasons are. Okay, another good article in the news on Housing Wire. Why we should be cheering for this mom and pop investors in the housing market. And I think this is something that we talk about negatively in other industries. I'm really proud of Logan Mohtashami, who is one of the really good analysts of the market in Housing Wire. And, ideally, people own their own house. Because people own their own house, have a stake in the community. They're going to not commit crime. They're going to keep their house up more likely than a tenant or renter. We all know our neighborhoods, the houses that are less well kept up, the ones with multiple cars and noise are typically renters, not owners. And so we want people to own a house, but if it's not going to be a renter, an owner in our neighborhood, we would rather be a local mom and pop investor than some global conglomerate who's just squeezing profits out and doesn't care about the long-term health of our community. They're not worried about schools and quality of life. They're just trying to get the rent income out of their houses. And so I do think it's a good item that the number of homes being rented by mom and pop, meaning investors with one or five, up to five investments, is a positive trend versus the global investors, which I think is a sign of real institutional problems when that happens. Because those big landlords, the globalists, they're the ones who lobby Congress and the graft and the payola. Small mom and pop investors typically can't do that. And so that becomes, I think, another reason why we want people who are in our communities to own our property. Okay, under the clown show called Los Angeles Government, head clown Governor Newsom and minor clown Mayor Bass flailing around trying to figure out how they're going to solve the housing problem. On one hand, they're going to make it all low-income housing. Then when they're in multiple housing and we're caught, they say, oh, no, we're not going to do that. They had passed a law last year they're so excited about. They wanted to force every city to allow duplexes where there are single-family homes, and many cities were suing the state to avoid doing that. And now in the burned areas, Newsom and Bass got together and said, we're not going to force building of duplexes in those areas. It's really interesting because on one hand, building duplexes is a positive thing for getting more people in your city, more density, which is the goal of our politicians. But nobody wants a duplex built next to them. If you have a backyard and somebody builds a 2-story converted garage, you got now people looking out the window into your backyard. That's what I have. Also, it means more people parking in the same streets in the same lot, maybe less garage space if you convert the garage. So nobody really wants this other than the owners, which is their right to want that. And it was interesting that in the Palisades, one of the thoughts was they could double the number of units by having duplexes as they build. And you can imagine somebody who lost their home, they're going to lose money. Insurance doesn't cover everything, doesn't cover all the costs. There's no way. You can imagine that a homeowner there might want to rebuild and build a second unit and rent it out and maybe make the whole thing a rental. Maybe they've already moved and bought someplace else. You can imagine why they want to do that. But you can also imagine neighbors saying, wait, I want to build my house. I don't want my neighbor to have a duplex overlooking my backyard. And so it's an interesting question, and Governor Newsom is going to allow LA to suspend that law in the fire burn zones. Not sure why that gets special treatment and the rest of us don't. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would you give owners of property in the Palisades less rights than people in other parts of the city and state? And yet that's what they're doing. And so, I don't know, the whole thing, the whole idea of a state forcing zoning restrictions is kind of contrary to our way of doing business normally. This is the Democrat Party and Newsom and Bass, where they're deciding everything, and it seems like their own decisions go back and forth and they can't decide what's best for the city. So again, I think in general, the law should be repealed and allow cities to make those decisions rather than to have it come from Sacramento, flown in by a politician. Okay, another interesting article I saw, the headline kind of caught my attention, in Market Watch. Home prices set an all-time high, but some regions are seeing price decline. So there's two parts of the story, obviously. One, for all the talk about the housing market, and it's true, less sales. Normally in a business with less sales, prices go down. Yet in housing, that's not the case. Housing prices are the highest they've ever been overall. And that's because we're not building enough houses. And that's because politicians don't want to build more houses, particularly in states like California. In fact, the prior thing we talked about was the state was forcing duplexes, and now they're undoing that in the Palisades. They're not going to allow that law there. So I think that we don't have to wonder why housing prices are going up and why it's less affordable. We know why it's a decision made, and we should argue about whether or not that's a good decision. But the truth is, housing prices are all-time high. Buyers should feel comfortable knowing that even with all the challenges of the economy for the last couple of years, it's been a great investment. And at the same time, some regions are seeing declines. And so that always is a good reminder that every market is independent. And just because the economy could be great nationally, it could be bad locally. And local could mean Southern California. It can also mean in your neighborhood, depending on what's going on. So for example, housing prices are doing great in certain parts of West Los Angeles, and yet not doing so good, say, in downtown LA, where there were the protests or rioters, pick your own word, going on, and it's hard to sell those houses down there now. So again, real estate is very local, hyper-local, and yet overall, nationally, the market seems to be moving in the right direction. So what do you see? I'm a real estate agent, and I would say that's my impression. Nationally, the market's good. There's pockets where it's not. One of the pockets here in LA is DTLA. We're hoping that will turn around here soon in the long run. Love to get your comments. Please put comments below. Like this if you like it. Subscribe. And if you don't, send me an email. Tell me why. The whole point of this is a discussion, and everybody should have their own opinion on these matters. Let's share them together. If I can help in any way, please reach out at LAProbate on social media. As always, make today your best day ever.